My family evicted me from my own house on my 18th birthday, so on their wedding day, I handed them papers that ended it all forever. I'm 26, male now, but this started when I was 22. I grew up in this big-ass house in Oak Ridge, one of those neighborhoods where everyone's got money, but nobody talks about it. The kind of place with those fancy mailboxes and where dudes mow their lawns in polo shirts on Saturday mornings while drinking craft IPAs. My grandpa was the real MVP in our family. Old man built an empire from scratch in commercial real estate back in the 80s and 90s. Dude was smart with his investments and ended up owning half the office buildings downtown. He wasn't flashy though, drove the same Buick for like 15 years and taught me about investing since I was like 10. I'd sit in his study while he explained stock charts and property values to me. Other kids had baseball with their grandpas. I had investment 101 and honestly wouldn't trade it for anything. Always know where your money's going, Tyler, he'd say. The minute you lose track is the minute someone else starts making decisions with it. Man was dropping financial literacy bombs on me before I could even drive. My parents, that's where it gets complicated. Mom, I'll call her Karen, was always obsessed with keeping up appearances. Like obsessed. She'd rather die than show up to a neighborhood barbecue without the perfect potato salad and a fresh blowout. Dad, Richard, was barely in the picture. Some finance bro who was more interested in his golf handicap than raising me. They split when I was 14 and Dad moved to Phoenix with his secretary. Classic move, right? The whole divorce was messy. Mom throwing his clothes on the lawn. Dad changing the Netflix password. Real mature from people in their 40s. After the divorce, Mom started dating again real quick. Enter Derek, my stepdad. This dude was the worst kind of phony. Rolex watch, but always forgot his wallet. Talked about his investment portfolio, but was actually drowning in debt. He had this whole routine of name-dropping celebrities he'd supposedly met in restaurants he couldn't get reservations to. Dude was the human equivalent of those Instagram accounts where people rent private jets for photo shoots. And he moved in with us when I was 16. And from day one, it was clear he saw me as competition. Not like for Mom's attention, gross, but for resources. Space in the house, food in the fridge, money for whatever. Tyler, you're taking up the good parking space again. Or Tyler, do you really need to eat that much food? Groceries aren't cheap. Little shit like that. Whenever Grandpa would visit, Derek would transform into this perfect stepfather figure. Tyler's doing great in school. I've been helping him with his calculus. Bruh, you didn't even go to college, let alone help me with advanced math. What nobody knew except Grandpa's lawyer was that Grandpa had set up his will in a specific way before he died when I was 17. The house we lived in, he'd put it in a trust for me that would transfer to my name upon my college graduation, assuming I finished my degree. Until then, Mom was just the trustee. Grandpa knew Mom was terrible with money and wanted to make sure I'd have something solid to my name when I grew up. My mom had always been bougie, but after Dad left, it got worse. She'd max out credit cards on designer handbags, but then forget to send me money when I needed books for school. Meanwhile, Derek was always between opportunities. Code for unemployed, but too proud to admit it. He'd occasionally land some sales job, flex about his territory for a few months, then mysteriously be moving in a different direction when things didn't work out. I didn't know any of this inheritance stuff yet. I just knew Grandpa had told me once, "I've made sure you'll be taken care of, Tyler. Just focus on making something of yourself." So, that's what I did. Worked my butt off in school, got into Westlake University, majored in finance. Mom and Derek acted supportive, but there was always this weird vibe, like they were waiting for something. When I got accepted to Westlake, Derek's first response wasn't congratulations, but that's going to be expensive. Like, thanks for the vote of confidence, bro. Living at home during college was tense. They'd make these comments about how generous they were letting me stay there rent-free, even though the house was paid off decades ago by Grandpa. They'd ask when I planned to move out before I'd even finished freshman year. Classic passive-aggressive. I spent most of my time on campus, partly for classes, but mostly to avoid home. Made some solid friends, especially my buddy Marcus, who became my ride or die through all this. He saw through Mom and Derek's BS from day one. "Your stepdad's the type of guy who wears sunglasses indoors and calls everyone chief," Marcus said after meeting Derek once. Spot on assessment. Fast forward to my college graduation day, May 21, 2021. I just finished my finance degree with honors. Took me 4 years of grinding, working part-time at Best Buy to cover expenses Mom couldn't help with, despite living in a paid-off mansion. Derek's car payments for his leased BMW were apparently more important than my textbooks, and the ceremony was that morning. Long, boring as hell, but I felt proud. Mom, Derek, and surprisingly, Dad showed up. They were being weirdly nice all day, which should have been my first clue something was up. Mom kept taking selfies with me in my cap and gown, posting them with captions like, "So proud of my brilliant son." Total performance for her Instagram followers. Dad awkwardly gave me a $100 Amazon gift card. "You can get whatever you need for your apartment," he said, already assuming I wasn't coming home. Subtle, Dad. Real subtle. "Let's celebrate at Costello's tonight," Mom suggested after the ceremony. Costello's was this fancy Italian place that Mom and Derek only went to for special occasions. Usually when they were trying to impress someone, the kind of restaurant where they list the pasta shapes in Italian and don't put prices on the women's menus. We get to the restaurant and I'm thinking maybe they're actually proud of me for once. We order drinks. Dad makes an awkward toast about entering the real world. Rich coming from a dude who hadn't paid child support in years. And then Mom slides a thick envelope across the table. A graduation present, honey," she says with this smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Derek was practically bouncing in his seat like a kid who put plastic wrap over the toilet and is waiting for someone to use it. I open it expecting maybe a check, though they'd never been generous before, or maybe a card. Instead, I found a freaking 30-day notice to vacate, a formal letter telling me I needed to be out of the house by the end of June. Not even handwritten, a typed legal document like I was some random tenant they were evicting. "What the hell is this?" I asked, feeling like someone had just punched me in the stomach. Mom sipped her wine casually. "Derek and I have decided to convert your room into the home gym we've always wanted. We're starting renovations next month, but I was planning to live at home while I start my job search," I said, still trying to process what was happening. "We talked about this. We need our space." Just a month earlier, I'd specifically asked if I could stay at home post-graduation while I found a job and saved for my own place. Derek laughed. Actually laughed and said, "Tyler, you're 22 now. A college graduate. Time to stand on your own 2 feet. We need our space." Dad, who'd been quiet, finally chimed in. "You can crash at my condo for a couple weeks if you need to. The futon in my office folds out." This from the guy who'd missed most of my birthdays and whose child support checks were always in the mail. The guy who told me he couldn't help with tuition because he was a bit cash-strapped while posting pics from his Cabo vacation with his new wife. But it got worse. Mom pulled out another envelope. "Also, we need you to sign these papers. Just some formalities about the house and Grandpa's estate." "What formalities?" I asked, taking the envelope but not opening it. "Just clearing up some outdated language in the will," Derek said, waving his hand dismissively. "Your grandfather left some provisions about the property that don't make sense anymore. Standard stuff." Something felt off. Way off. "I should probably read these first," I said. Mom's face tightened. "It's just legal jargon, Tyler. No need to overthink it. We had our attorney draw everything up properly." "Their attorney? Since when did they have an attorney on retainer?" Mom could barely afford her Nordstrom card payments. "I'll take them home and look them over," I insisted. Derek's smile disappeared. "We really need those signed tonight. Our contractor starts next week, and we need to clear up the title issues before then." "Title issues? What the hell?" I put the papers back in the envelope. "I want to read them carefully first." The rest of dinner was tense as hell. They kept trying to bring up the papers and I kept deflecting. Derek got progressively drunker and more irritated, eventually snapping at the waiter over the bill. Dad was checking his watch every 5 minutes like he had somewhere better to be. Mom kept shooting Derek these do-something looks, and when I got home that night, I finally opened the envelope and tried to make sense of the legal jargon. Something about transferring inherited interest and relinquishing claims to the estate. It was written in that dense legalese that's specifically designed to confuse normal people. That morning, I remembered what my grandpa told me before he passed away. "When the time comes, talk to the lawyer." So, I did. Found the office downtown, called right when they opened, and landed a same-day appointment. The place looked exactly like somewhere that handled old family money. I gave my name, and they didn't even need to check the book. He saw me walk in, gave a small nod, and said, "I was wondering when you'd come. What brings you in today?" I pulled out the papers from my backpack. "My mom and stepdad want me to sign these. Something about Grandpa's will." The moment he saw the papers, his face changed. He put on his glasses and started reading, his expression growing darker with each page, like legit concerned. "Where did you get these?" he asked sharply. I explained about the graduation dinner and the eviction notice. He set the papers down and took a deep breath. "Tyler, I need to explain something important to you. When your grandfather died, he left specific instructions regarding the family home. The property was placed in a trust with your mother as trustee, but with explicit instructions that ownership would transfer to you upon your college graduation." I sat there stunned. "The house is mine. As of yesterday, yes. Legally, you are the sole owner of the property at 487 Lakewood Drive. Your mother's trustee status terminated upon your graduation. My head was spinning. I remembered all those times Mom and Derek talked about their house and their plans for renovations and upgrades. All the times they lorded it over me like I was some freeloader. And these papers? I asked, pointing to the stack on his desk. These, he said with disgust, would have you sign away your inheritance to your mother and Derek. If you had signed these, you would be transferring ownership of a $1.2 million property for nothing in return. He flipped to the last page. They didn't even offer you compensation. My mind was racing. So, they knew all this time. He nodded grimly. Your mother was fully informed of the terms of the trust when your grandfather passed. She's been aware for 5 years that the property would transfer to you upon graduation. That hit me hard. For 5 years, Mom knew the house would be mine. That's why they were so eager to get me to sign those papers right away at the celebration dinner, no less. They thought I'd be caught up in the moment, happy and distracted, and just sign whatever they put in front of me. And the eviction notice? Completely invalid. They can't evict the legal owner of the property. He paused. Tyler, I don't say this lightly, but what they've attempted here borders on fraud. They tried to deceive you into signing away your inheritance. I felt sick. All those years of Derek's comments about their house and Mom talking about when you eventually move out, they knew they were living in my house. The audacity of these people. What should I do? I asked. He leaned forward. First, don't sign anything. Second, I suggest we prepare the proper documentation to assert your ownership. Also, given the circumstances, you might want to consider staying elsewhere temporarily while we sort this out. They can't legally remove you, but things could get uncomfortable. I nodded, feeling like the ground had shifted under me. There's one more thing, I said. They're getting married in 3 months. Big wedding, reception at the house. He raised an eyebrow. Interesting timing. What do you mean? Well, if they're planning a large event at the property, having clear ownership would be important. And if they're planning to refinance or take out equity after marriage, he let the implication hang in the air. As I left his office, my phone was blowing up with texts from Mom asking where I was and reminding me they needed those papers signed ASAP. Also, a missed call from Derek. No voicemail. Typical. I didn't respond. I needed time to think and plan. For the next week, I avoided being home as much as possible. When Mom or Derek asked about the papers, I'd say I was still looking them over. Just want to understand what I'm signing, I'd say, which made Derek visibly annoyed. It's just formality paperwork, Tyler. Don't make this complicated, he'd snap. Meanwhile, Mom was deep in wedding planning mode. Bridal magazines everywhere, Pinterest boards full of flower arrangements and table settings, caterer samples filling the fridge. She'd always wanted a big wedding. Her ceremony with Dad had been small because Grandpa wouldn't fund anything extravagant. And now she was going all out. I was meeting regularly with the lawyer who was documenting everything and preparing the legal paperwork to formally assert my ownership of the property. He advised me to play along for now. The more information we have about their intentions, the stronger our position, he explained. So, I started paying attention. I noticed Mom and Derek had already contacted contractors about renovating not just my room, but the entire east wing of the house. They had booked caterers and rental companies for their wedding reception. They were making all these plans for my house without even having the decency to ask. What really got me was finding blueprints for a complete kitchen renovation scheduled to start the week after their wedding. They were planning to gut the kitchen Grandpa had specially designed for Grandma before she passed. The kitchen with the height adjustable counters because she was barely 5 feet tall. They were going to rip it all out for some modern monstrosity with an espresso bar. I crashed at my buddy Marcus' apartment most nights, just bringing clothes and essentials in my backpack. Marcus was cool about it. We'd been tight since freshman year, and his parents had always treated me like a second son. Dude, they seriously tried to steal your house, he said when I explained the situation. That's some cold-blooded shit right there. Yeah, and the worst part, they've known for years that it would be mine. All those times they complained about me living rent-free. They were the ones living rent-free in my house. Marcus shook his head. What are you going to do? Working on something with Grandpa's lawyer, but for now, I'm just watching and gathering intel. The wedding plans were ramping up. Mom sent me a fancy invitation in the mail. Karen Mitchell and Derek Woodson request the honor of your presence at their wedding. At the bottom was a handwritten note. Don't forget to bring those signed papers. We need to wrap this up before the wedding. P.S. The ceremony is at St. Luke's, reception at the house. After the house, not your house or our house, just the house, like it was some neutral property. Through all that I was disturbed. Especially after graduation phase, and the emptiness I felt inside. My job search was on hold while I dealt with this mess. The lawyer helped me access some funds from another trust my grandfather had set up, one I hadn't even known about until now. Apparently, there was a separate education and living expenses trust that would convert to a full inheritance when I turned 30. Not huge money, but enough to give me breathing room. Your grandfather was very thorough, he explained. He wanted to make sure you had a solid foundation before receiving significant assets. The more I learned about Grandpa's planning, the more I realized how much he must have distrusted my mother when it came to money. And now I understood why. 3 months was a long time to pretend everything was normal. But I'm patient when I need to be. It's during this time I caught Derek going through my mail twice. Once I came home early and found him in my room, rummaging through my desk drawers. Just looking for a pen, he claimed, despite the cup of pens clearly visible on my desk. They started showing the house off to friends like it was some HGTV special. And this is where we're putting the luxury snack bar, he'd say, pointing to the basement. The same space Grandpa turned into my gaming setup for my 16th birthday. Mom kept dropping comments about how excited she was for me to start my own journey. Translation: she couldn't wait to kick me out. One night, I overheard them talking in their bedroom through the air vent. What if he doesn't sign? Mom was asking. He will, Derek assured her. Kid's naive. Besides, what's he going to do? Sue his own mother? If only they knew. As the wedding date approached, I finally gave Mom and Derek what they wanted. Or so they thought. I'll sign the papers at the wedding, I told them over dinner one night about 2 weeks before the big day. Kind of symbolic, right? New beginnings and all that. They exchanged looks. Derek seemed suspicious, but Mom was just relieved. Perfect. We can handle it right after the ceremony before the reception, she said. Actually, I countered. Let's do it during the reception. More festive that way. Mom looked like she wanted to argue, but just nodded. Fine, just don't forget. The next 2 weeks were a blur of wedding preparations. The house was being cleaned. The yard landscaped. Mom hired some fancy wedding coordinator who kept showing up with fabric swatches and flower arrangements. They were sparing no expense. And why would they? In their minds, they had just secured a $1.2 million property for the cost of some legal paperwork. Karen was out here acting like she owned Buckingham Palace. Started calling the house my estate when she was on the phone with vendors. Not our house, not even the house, her estate. Like she didn't spend the last 5 years dipping into her Nordstrom card to fake a lifestyle. She had the cleaning crew running drills like it was boot camp. The chandeliers must shine. Ma'am, we live in the suburbs. You've got a fake lemon bowl from Target on the table. Calm down. She cornered me one morning while I was grabbing cereal, talking about how I needed to mow the lawn and trim the hedges before the wedding. The yard reflects the bride, she said. I just stared at her, didn't realize I was on payroll. She gave me that fake smile and hit me with, well, you are still living here in my house. The same house she tried to get me to sign away behind my back. And the wildest part, she told the florist with me standing right there. This house has always meant so much to me. My father would have wanted me to start the next chapter here. Nah, ma'am. Your father didn't build that house so you could scam your way through your third marriage. He built it to keep me protected from people exactly like you. At that point, I realized this wasn't just entitlement. It was performance. Karen wasn't just trying to take the house. She was rewriting the whole story to make herself the star. Cinderella vibes minus the charm. Full Karen mode, 4K resolution, no shame, and they even had the audacity to ask me to help pay for some of the wedding expenses. Since you're still living here, Derek pointed out, as if that justified asking me to chip in for their wedding. Sorry, tight on cash right now, I lied. Job hunting, you know. Meanwhile, the lawyer and I finalized our plan. The paperwork asserting my ownership was ready. We had copies of the trust documents, the transfer of deed, everything official and stamped and notarized. Are you sure you want to do it this way? He asked me the day before the wedding. We could handle this more privately. They tried to trick me into signing away my inheritance on what was supposed to be my graduation celebration, I replied. They didn't care about embarrassing me then. Why should I care now? The night before the wedding, Mom came to my room. For a second, I thought maybe she was having second thoughts. Maybe some maternal instinct was kicking in at the 11th hour. Tyler, honey, I want tomorrow to be perfect, she said, sitting on the edge of my bed. It's a big day for all of us. Sure, Mom, I replied, waiting for the other shoe to drop. So, I need you to be on your best behavior. No making scenes, no problems with Derek, and don't forget those papers. So much for maternal instinct. Of course, I said, the picture of innocence. Wouldn't dream of causing any problems. She smiled, patted my hand, and left. Not a word about how this was the last night before I supposedly had to move out. Not a hint of concern about where I'd go or what I'd do. Just a warning to behave myself at her precious wedding. The morning of the wedding arrived, September 15th. Perfect early fall weather. I got dressed in the suit I'd bought for the occasion. Nothing too flashy, just a charcoal gray number that fit well. I watched from my window as the rental company set up tables in the backyard, as the catering trucks arrived, as the bartenders set up the open bar. All for an event I hadn't authorized on my property. I went to the church ceremony and sat in the back. Watched Mom walk down the aisle in her designer dress, probably purchased with funds from my house. Watched Derek stand there looking smug in his expensive tux. They said their vows, exchanged rings, and kissed while everyone applauded. I slipped out before the receiving line formed and texted the lawyer. It's time. The reception was in full swing by the time I arrived. About 150 people milling around the property, eating fancy hors d'oeuvres. Mom and Derek hadn't arrived yet. They were still taking photos at the church. The lawyer was waiting for me at the front gate along with Sheriff Reyes, who had the legal paperwork showing my ownership of the property. We waited in the circular driveway right where the wedding party would arrive. The first limo pulled up about 20 minutes later. Mom and Derek stepped out, all smiles and wedding day bliss until they saw us standing there. Tyler. Mom's smile faltered. What's going on? Who are these people? The lawyer stepped forward, all professional. Mrs. Mitchell, Mr. Woodson. I'm representing the legal owner of this property. Derek laughed. What are you talking about? This is our house. The sheriff handed them the documentation. According to county records and the properly executed will of Mason Mitchell, this property belongs solely to Tyler Mitchell, as of May 22nd, the date of his college graduation. The blood drained from Mom's face as she flipped through the pages. Derek grabbed the papers from her, his eyes darting back and forth as he read. This can't be right, he sputtered. It is right, the lawyer said calmly. Tyler became the legal owner when he graduated college, as stipulated in his grandfather's will. The papers you attempted to have him sign would have transferred ownership to you illegally. By now, the wedding party had arrived in the second limousine. People were getting out, confused by the scene unfolding in the driveway. Mom's bridesmaids, all Botoxed and spray tanned to perfection, were whispering behind their hands. Derek's groomsmen looked like they weren't sure if this was a prank. Tyler, Mom hissed. We can talk about this later. Our guests are arriving. These people, I said, gesturing to the crowd gathering around us, are attempting to hold an event on private property without the owner's permission. Derek's face was turning red. You little, after everything we've done for you? Like what? Trying to evict me from my own house? Attempting to trick me into signing away my inheritance? Mom was frantically trying to salvage the situation. Tyler's confused, everyone. Just a little family misunderstanding. Let's all head to the backyard for cocktails. The sheriff stepped forward. Mr. and Mrs. Woodson, you have two options. You can cancel this reception immediately or you can relocate it to another venue. This gathering has not been authorized by the property owner. Mom's sister, Aunt Cindy, pushed her way forward. Karen, what's going on? I stepped forward, looked out at the guests who were already whispering and pulling out their phones. Just so everyone's clear, you're all here at my house without my permission. I was evicted by these two at my graduation dinner, the house my grandfather left me. They tried to scam me out of it with fake paperwork. So, if you're here for the open bar, I'd suggest calling Uber Wedding Rescue before the hors d'oeuvres get cold. A few guests actually laughed. Chad looked like he was about to evaporate from secondhand embarrassment. Mom was full on crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Tyler is ruining my wedding day after everything I've done for him. Derek's best man, this douchey guy named Chad, seriously his name was Chad, tried to play peacemaker. Hey man, it's their wedding day. Can't this wait until tomorrow? Funny, they didn't want to wait to try to kick me out of my own house or trick me into signing it over to them, I replied. Why should I wait? Derek made one last desperate attempt. Listen, Tyler, let's talk numbers, he said in a lower voice. Everyone has a price. Name yours. I shook my head. Not happening. You have 1 hour to collect your personal items for the night. The rest you can arrange to pick up next week. Oh, where are we supposed to go? Mom wailed, her perfect wedding makeup now streaked all over her face. Dad mentioned his futon folds out, I replied coolly, throwing their own words back at them. What followed was pure chaos. Guests awkwardly returning to their cars. The catering company packing up their half-prepared food. Mom crying hysterically while Derek barked into his phone trying to find a last-minute venue that could take 150 people. I stood in the driveway watching it all unfold. Feeling strangely empty. This wasn't happiness. It was justice. The kind of justice Grandpa would have approved of. Direct, decisive, and absolutely warranted. Mom's cousin Bethany, one of the few family members I actually liked, came up to me during the chaos. Is it true? She asked quietly. They tried to steal your inheritance? I showed her the eviction notice and the transfer papers they wanted me to sign. She read them quickly, her eyes widening. Jesus, Karen, she muttered. Then she hugged me. Your grandpa would be proud of you standing up for yourself. That meant more than she knew. They ended up moving the reception to the Westlake Hotel ballroom. A last-minute booking that cost them triple the normal rate. Most guests had already left from what I heard later. The ones who stayed were treated to cold food, a cash bar, the original bar was supposed to be open, and the most awkward first dance in wedding history. That night, I walked through the house, my house, looking at the wedding gifts piled in the foyer, the half-assembled decorations in the backyard. I donated all the wedding gifts to a homeless shelter the next day. Petty, maybe, but they were delivered to my address, so technically they were my property. And honestly, Mom and Derek didn't deserve the 6 KitchenAid mixers they'd probably received. Mom tried calling me nonstop for weeks. I eventually agreed to meet her at a coffee shop where she alternated between fake apologies and angry accusations. We were just trying to secure our future, she explained. Like that justified everything by destroying mine? I asked. She had no answer. You could have handled it differently, she sniffed. You didn't have to humiliate us in front of everyone we know, and you didn't have to try to trick me into signing away my inheritance, I countered. You didn't have to give me an eviction notice at my graduation dinner. She had the audacity to blame Grandpa. Dad always did love you more than me. He never trusted me with money. Gee, I wonder why, I said, staring pointedly at her designer purse. Derek never apologized. Instead, he threatened to sue for improvements they'd made to the property over the years. My lawyer shut that down with documentation showing all major renovations had been paid for by the trust my grandfather had established for home maintenance. The last text I got from him read, "You'll regret this, kid. What goes around comes around." I changed the locks the day after the wedding. Had a security system installed the following week. Mom and Derek tried to come by unannounced a few times, but the alarm company called me each time. Eventually, they got the message. Living alone in that big house was weird at first. Quieter than I was used to, but also peaceful. No more passive-aggressive comments. No more tension at dinner. I could leave dishes in the sink if I wanted to, though Grandpa raised me better than that. I ended up selling the house 8 months later for $1.4 million. The market was hot and I didn't need the constant reminders of what had happened there. Bought a nice condo downtown and invested the rest following Grandpa's principles. Got an entry-level position at Vertex Capital. Ironic since it's in one of the buildings Grandpa used to own. Started building my career. Turns out having a solid education and not being in debt gives you options. I'm not rich by any means, but I'm comfortable in building towards something real, not pretending to be something I'm not. Mom and Derek, their marriage lasted exactly 14 months before imploding. Turns out when you build a relationship on materialism and deception, it doesn't hold up well under pressure. They fought constantly about money after the wedding, especially after Derek's latest business venture failed spectacularly. Last I heard, Derek moved to Tampa after the divorce. And Mom is living in a small apartment complaining to anyone who will listen about her ungrateful son. And Dad actually reached out after he heard what happened. Said he was proud of me for standing up for myself. Too little, too late, but I appreciated the gesture. We grab lunch maybe once a year when he's in town. It's awkward, but less toxic than it used to be. I'm dating a cool girl named Leah now. Met her at a friend's housewarming. She knows the whole story and thinks I did the right thing. Family doesn't try to scam family, she said simply when I told her everything. She's close with her parents and siblings, which was weird for me at first. Took me a while to realize that's how normal families operate, with actual love and support instead of schemes and manipulation. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I just signed those papers at graduation. How easy it would have been to give in. I'd probably be living in some crappy apartment with roommates, drowning in debt while Mom and Derek entertained in my house, renovated my house, maybe even sold my house out from under me. But Grandpa didn't raise me to be a pushover, even from beyond the grave. The old man knew exactly what he was doing when he set everything up the way he did. He knew Mom. He knew her priorities. And he made sure I was protected. The house is gone, but the lesson stuck. Family isn't defined by blood. And sometimes the people who should love you the most are the ones you need to watch out for the most.